The story you've been told about Scanderbeg is a lie. Not the whole story, but the most important parts. Before we talk about the Albanian national hero who fought for freedom against the Ottoman Empire, we need to understand what was really happening in Kosovo. Because the forgotten war, the one that actually explains everything, started long before the Ottomans arrived. Here's what they don't teach you. The Kosovo conflict wasn't originally Muslim versus Christian. It was Christian versus Christian. Serbian Orthodox versus Albanian Catholic. By 1343 to 1345, Serbian Emperor Stefan Dušan had conquered all Albanian lands. And what he did next reveals the true nature of this conflict. In 1349, Dušan proclaimed his legal code. It's right there in the historical record, but somehow always gets forgotten. Catholic Albanians were called half-believers. Their faith was labeled Latin heresy. The punishment for refusing to convert to Serbian Orthodoxy? Death. But it wasn't just Catholics. Orthodox Albanians in eastern Kosovo were also targeted. Forced baptism of their children with Serbian names, mandatory Serbian language religious ceremonies, systematic cultural erasure. In 1347, Pope Clement VI demanded that Dušan return seized Albanian Catholic churches in Prizren, Novoberde, Trepsi, Janjeve, Peje, Dečan, and Grasanice. Dušan promised to stop the persecution. He lied. The persecution continued. By the 17th century, historical sources confirm that in Kosovo, Montenegro, and Macedonia, when people said Catholic, they specifically meant Albanian. The words were interchangeable. This Serbian conquest triggered mass Albanian migration to Greece in 1347. Entire Albanian tribes, Kuch, Bielopavlik, Palabarda, were forcibly assimilated, erased from history. So let's be clear, Albanians and Serbs were fighting over Kosovo for centuries before Islam entered the picture. This was always an ethnic and territorial conflict. Religion was just the marker of identity. Now the Ottomans arrive. And the standard narrative is designed to make you see this in a very specific way. The story you've been told. Evil Muslim Ottomans forced innocent Christian Albanians to abandon their true faith. But let's look at what actually happened. 16th century Ottoman census data, the actual records, show Albanian territories remain 95 to 99% Christian well into Ottoman rule. Meanwhile, Bosnia had already reached 46% Muslim. Parts of Macedonia, 75% Muslim. Albanian conversion was exceptionally slow. It didn't peak until the 17th and 18th centuries. That's 200 to 300 years after Ottoman conquest. Why? Because the Ottoman system wasn't a forced conversion machine. It was a multi-religious imperial structure where Christians and Jews paid jizya, a poll tax, but were exempt from military service. Muslims paid zakat, a wealth tax, and were required for military duty. Both systems had advantages and disadvantages. Conversion was an option, not a requirement. For Albanians who had spent generations under Serbian Orthodox persecution, forced conversion to Serbian Orthodoxy, churches seized, children given Serbian names, the Ottoman system offered something different, the ability to choose. Some Albanians chose Islam for economic advantage, positions in government, avoiding jizya, business opportunities. Some Albanians chose Islam because they genuinely believed in it. Spiritual conviction, theological persuasion, religious community. Some Albanians chose Islam to escape the specific Christian oppression they'd experienced under Serbian rule. And many Albanians remained Christian and maintained their communities under Ottoman protection, which the system allowed. This wasn't mass-forced conversion. It was a multi-religious empire where people made choices based on complex motivations. Now, were there economic pressures? Yes. The jizya increased from 45 akçes in the 1500s to 780 akçes by the mid-1600s. That sounds like targeted persecution. But here's what they don't tell you. That's during 500% empire-wide inflation caused by Spanish silver and gold from the New World flooding European markets. The Ottoman treasury was collapsing. Trade routes were disrupted. The economy was in freefall. So what did they do? Raised all taxes. Muslim zakat, Christian jizya, land taxes, trade taxes, everything went up. Muslims weren't exempt from economic pain. They were paying increased zakat, dealing with debased coinage, facing confiscations. Everyone was suffering from the same economic collapse caused by global trade shifts, the peak Albanian conversions to Islam. They followed the Russo-Turkish wars of the 18th century, when Ottomans viewed Orthodox populations as potential Russian allies. That's geopolitics, not theology, but notice how the narrative always frames it. Christian Albanian identity. Authentic, natural, real, Muslim Albanian identity. Imposed, coerced, false. Why is Albanian Christianity assumed natural, but Albanian Islam assumed forced? Why do we assume Albanian conversion to Islam needs to be explained away as economic pressure, political calculation, anything except genuine religious choice? Think about how we talk about other conversions. Albanian adoption of Christianity under Roman and Byzantine influence. Spread of civilization. Serbian forced conversion of Catholic Albanians to Orthodox Christianity. Political persecution, which it was. Albanian conversion to Islam under Ottomans. Forced conversion, loss of true identity, oppression. The double standard is the tell. Let's pause here because we need to address this directly. The forced conversion narrative serves a specific purpose. It maintains the idea that Christian identity is authentic and Muslim identity is imposed or illegitimate. This lets Western powers claim Christian Albanians as ours, while treating Muslim Albanians as either victims who need saving or traitors who chose the wrong side. It denies Muslim Albanians their agency. It says, you didn't really choose Islam, you were tricked, forced, coerced, your identity is fake. That's not defending Muslim Albanians, that's erasing their choices, their history, their identity. And here's the irony. The same European colonial exploitation of the Americas that caused the economic crisis, flooding markets with New World precious metals, also destabilized the Ottoman Empire. And then Europeans used that destabilization to recruit Albanian mercenaries and claim they were saving Albanians from Ottoman oppression. The same powers that caused the economic collapse then weaponized that collapse to justify intervention. I need to be clear, pointing out that some conversions were voluntary, that Islam offered some Albanians genuine opportunities or spiritual fulfillment, that the Ottoman system allowed religious pluralism. That's not defending imperialism. It's recognizing that Albanians had agency. They made choices in complex circumstances, just like everyone else throughout history. Denying that agency, insisting every Muslim Albanian was either forced or fooled, that's the real erasure of Albanian identity. But while Albanians were navigating these imperial systems and making these choices, Western European powers were watching very carefully, because they had discovered something valuable: Albanian light cavalry, the Stradioti, that's what they called them. The name comes from the Greek word for soldier, but 80% of them were Albanian, with Greek commanders, and they were everywhere. From the 1470s onward, Albanian Stradioti almost entirely replaced Venetian light cavalry. Not supplemented, replaced. That's remarkable trust for supposedly foreign mercenaries. Then the system expanded. Milan, Genoa, Spain, France, the Holy Roman Empire, even England, all of them recruited Albanian mercenaries. These weren't just soldiers. They were refugees, moving to deployment zones with entire families. They pioneered light cavalry tactics in European armies, hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, feigned retreats. They had notable successes against French heavy cavalry during the Italian wars. The Venetians, the Papal States, the Kingdom of Naples, they all established Albanian settlement communities, infrastructure for permanent Albanian populations in Italy. Now ask yourself, why were Western powers so invested in maintaining access to Albanian military manpower? This was the exact same system Byzantium had used for centuries, recruiting exotic light cavalry from frontier populations. Byzantium had its Turco-Poles, literally sons of Turks, mixed Greek-Turkish cavalry. The West had its Stradioti, Albanian light cavalry. Both systems had the same goal: use mobile, skilled fighters from Balkan populations to supplement heavy European forces. Scouts, raiders, skirmishers, specialists in warfare European knights couldn't match. But there's a problem. If Albanians fully integrate into the Ottoman system, whether as Christians or Muslims, they're no longer as available for Western recruitment. They become Ottoman subjects with Ottoman loyalties. The West needed Albania to stay contested, to stay in their sphere of influence. And that's where Scanderbeg becomes useful. Enter Georgi Stradioti, born around 1405. His father, an Albanian lord, had fought the Ottomans, but eventually submitted. As insurance of loyalty, young Georgi was sent to the Ottoman court, standard practice. He was educated at the elite Enderun school. He converted to Islam. He was given the name Iskander after Alexander the Great and the rank of bey, hence Skanderbeg, and he was good, very good. For 20 years he served Sultan Murad II, rising to become Sanjak Bey, district commander of Dibra by 1440. But here's where the official story gets suspicious. According to historical sources, even while serving as an Ottoman district commander, Scanderbeg was covertly sending messengers to Naples, Venice, Ragusa, and Hungary. Stop and think about that. He's not just having doubts. He's running an active intelligence operation, building a network with Western powers while holding Ottoman military rank. That's not spontaneous defection planning. That's agent recruitment. Then comes November 1443. During the Battle of Niš against Hungarian forces, Scanderbeg deserts the Ottoman army along with 300 Albanian cavalry. Using a forged letter supposedly from Sultan Murad II, he captures the fortress of Kruja on November 28th. It's a textbook intelligence operation, forged credentials, small strike force, inside knowledge of Ottoman procedures. But here's what's really remarkable: the Western response. Just 4 months later, March 2nd, 1444, the League of Lesieux is established. Location: Venetian-controlled territory. Patronage: Venice. Albanian noble families unite under Scanderbeg's command. Not gradually, not after months of negotiation. Immediately, as if it had been pre-arranged. And then the money starts flowing. Pope Calixtus III sends 3,000 ducats and names him Captain General of the Holy See. King Alfonso of Naples sends 500 infantry, money, supplies, and grain. In 1451, just 7 years after his defection, Scanderbeg signs the Treaty of Gaeta, formally becoming a vassal of the Kingdom of Naples. Not an independent ruler, a vassal. He gets military protection and supplies. Naples gets an Albanian buffer state and recruiting ground. This isn't what spontaneous rebellion looks like. This is what a sponsored proxy operation looks like. Look at the map. Albania sits directly across the Adriatic from Italy. If the Ottomans fully control Albania, they have a launching point straight into Venice, Naples, the Papal States. But if Albania remains contested, in Western hands, or at least disputed, it's a buffer zone. It keeps Ottoman expansion tied up in the Balkans instead of crossing into Italy. Even better, it keeps Albanian military talent available for Western recruitment instead of fully integrated into Ottoman armies. Scanderbeg serves both purposes perfectly. For 25 years, from 1443 to 1468, Scanderbeg's forces, rarely more than 10,000 to 20,000 men, fight the Ottomans to a standstill in Albania. Not enough to drive them out completely, but enough to keep the territory contested, enough to keep Italy safe. enough to prove that Christian Albanian resistance is viable, which justifies continued Western funding. Enough to maintain a recruiting ground for Albanian Stradioti outside Ottoman control. In 1460, when the Kingdom of Naples faces internal rebellion, who do they call? Scanderbeg. He leads an expedition to Italy, helps secure Ferdinand I's throne. This isn't a freedom fighter operating independently. This is an asset, being deployed where his sponsors need him. Scanderbeg dies in 1468, likely from malaria. Albania continues to resist for another decade, but by 1479 the Ottomans complete their conquest. And here's the tell. What happens to Scanderbeg's soldiers and Albanian leaders? They're welcomed into the Kingdom of Naples, not as refugees, as settlers. Scanderbeg's family is given the Duchy of San Pietro in Galatina and the County of Soleto. Albanian soldiers are allowed to establish villages throughout southern Italy. These settlements still exist today. The Arboresh community, Albanian-speaking Italians who've maintained their identity for over 500 years. This wasn't charity. This was strategic demographic engineering. Think about what Naples just acquired. It's the perfect setup. You've created a permanent Albanian military recruiting base on your own territory, with built-in justification for continued intervention in Albanian affairs. And the legend of Skanderbeg? It gets bigger with every retelling. By the 16th century, French poets are writing about him. By the 18th century, Voltaire says the Byzantine Empire would have survived with a leader like him. Operas, epic poems, paintings, Scanderbeg becomes the symbol of Christian Europe's defense against Islamic expansion. But notice what this narrative does. It erases the original conflict. The Serbian persecution of Catholic Albanians? Forgotten. The fact that Albanian conversions to Islam were genuine choices or escapes from previous Christian oppression? Buried. The Western manipulation of Albanian resistance for their own strategic purposes? Hidden under the myth of the heroic freedom fighter. Instead, you get a simple story. Good Christian Albanians versus bad Muslim Ottomans. The ultimate clash of civilizations narrative, while hiding that this was always about competing empires fighting over valuable Albanian territory and military resources. And here's what makes this even clearer. Malta. In 1530, just 13 years before Scanderbeg's defection, Emperor Charles V gave the Knights Hospitaller the island of Malta. The same Charles V whose Kingdom of Naples would later grant land to Albanian settlers. Why give them Malta? Same reason as the Arboresh settlements. Strategic Mediterranean defense. Malta sits between Ottoman North Africa and Sicily. Perfect position to block Ottoman naval expansion into Italy. The Arboresh settlements sit in southern Italy. Perfect position to provide land-based military forces and block any Ottoman landing. Both were. The Knights Hospitaller in Malta numbered about 500, the same as the knights who defended against 40,000 Ottomans in the Great Siege of 1565. Albanian Stradioti in Western service numbered thousands across multiple armies. Malta was the island fortress. The Arboresh were the mainland military colonies. Both served the exact same function: permanent Christian military presence positioned to defend Western Mediterranean interests against Ottoman expansion. This wasn't charity. This wasn't humanitarian refuge. This was strategic military infrastructure disguised as religious protection. And it worked. Malta held for 268 years until Napoleon. The Arboresh community still exists today, 545 years later. That's not coincidence. That's system. And this brings us to the second part of the manipulation, how this history gets weaponized today. Catholic and Orthodox Albanian clergy teach that Ottoman-era conversion was falsification of Albanian identity, that Muslim Albanians are innocent victims of Islamization, that Islam is foreign to Albanian culture and tradition. Their argument buttressed by Arabist Muslim scholars who diminish Ottoman Islamic history by framing the Balkan Muslim conversions as insincere, Muslim for the benefits. But think about what this narrative actually does. It denies Muslim Albanians their agency and legitimacy. It says, you didn't really choose Islam. You were tricked, forced, coerced. Your religious identity is fake, temporary, imposed. Your ancestors' choices don't count. That's not defending Muslim Albanians. That's erasing them. And we don't apply this same logic to Christianity. Serbs forcibly converting Catholic Albanians to Orthodox Christianity in the 14th century? That's documented persecution. But somehow Albanian Christianity is still considered authentic, while Albanian Islam, even when freely chosen, is imposed. The forced conversion narrative serves multiple purposes. First, it delegitimizes Muslim Albanian identity as false or temporary, suggesting their religion is inauthentic and they should return to Christianity. Second, it creates a pathway for reconversion. If it was forced, then returning to Christianity is restoration of true identity rather than a new conversion. Third, it erases Serbian culpability for pre-Ottoman persecution. If the only oppressors were Muslim Ottomans, then Orthodox Serbs become fellow Christian victims instead of the original persecutors. Fourth, it transforms an ethnic territorial conflict into a religious one. Much easier to rally Western support for defending Christians than for complex Balkan territorial disputes. Fifth, it justifies modern discrimination against Muslim Albanians. Contemporary Albanian politicians still equate modernization with de-Islamization. The beauty of it is, you can claim Albanians as Mediterranean Christians when you need mercenaries or want to justify intervention, but you can also frame their Muslim population as victims who need saving when that serves Western interests. And notice, this same pattern appears everywhere Western powers intervene. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, the narrative is always the same. We're saving the people from their oppressive Muslim rulers. We're restoring their true identity. We're liberating them. While ignoring, the Scanderbeg operation was the prototype. Create or support local proxies. Fund their resistance. Frame it as liberation. Use the conflict to maintain your own strategic interests. Let's connect every piece. 14th century, Serbs persecute Christian Albanians, forcing conversions to Serbian Orthodoxy, seizing churches, erasing Albanian identity. 15th century, Ottomans arrive, establishing multi-religious imperial system. Albanian territories remain 95% plus Christian for the next 200 years, because conversion wasn't required. 17th to 18th centuries, peak Albanian conversion to Islam during 1440s. Western powers recruit high-ranking Ottoman Albanian officer Scanderbeg to defect and create Christian Albanian resistance, likely a pre-planned intelligence operation based on the evidence. 1441 to 1468, Western funding keeps Albania contested, preventing full Ottoman integration and preserving Albanian military talent for Western recruitment as Stradioti mercenaries. 1470s onward, Albanian Stradioti mercenaries become crucial to Western European armies, recruited from both Albanian resistance territories and later from Italian settlement communities. Post-1479. After Ottoman conquest, Western powers established permanent Albanian communities in Italy, the Arboresh, creating a permanent recruiting ground on European soil. Modern era. The forced conversion narrative delegitimizes Muslim Albanian identity, while the heroic Scanderbeg narrative hides Western manipulation and Albanian agency. At every stage, Albanians were valuable enough that everyone wanted to control them. Byzantium wanted their cavalry. Serbs wanted their land. Ottomans wanted their integration into the imperial system. Western powers wanted their mercenaries and buffer zone. And everyone used religion and historical narratives to justify their own manipulation as protection or liberation, while denying Albanians the agency to make their own choices, yet it's all blamed on big bad Turks in the narrative. Let that sink in. So was Scanderbeg a hero? That depends on what you mean by hero. Was he brave? Yes. Skilled? Absolutely. Did he fight for Albania? In his own way, probably. But the better questions are, was his defection genuine or orchestrated? Were his secret messages to Western powers evidence of independent planning or proof of prior recruitment? Was the immediate, coordinated Western support remarkable coincidence or evidence of prearrangement? Was his vassalage to Naples independence or client status? Was the post-conquest Albanian settlement in Italy humanitarian refuge or strategic recruitment infrastructure? The evidence suggests Scanderbeg was a Western intelligence asset, recruited while serving the Ottomans, activated at the strategic moment, funded and supported to create exactly the buffer state Western powers needed. That doesn't diminish Albanian courage or suffering. If anything, it reveals something more important. Albanian military prowess was so valuable that multiple empires competed to control it. The real Albanian story isn't about being passive victims or pure heroes in other people's narratives. It's about being caught between empires, all of which wanted to weaponize Albanian identity for their own purposes. And here's the critical part. Even when we expose Western manipulation, we have to be careful not to reproduce the Islamophobic framing embedded in these narratives. The forced conversion story isn't just factually wrong, it's politically weaponized. It erases Muslim Albanian agency and identity. It frames Islam as inherently foreign and oppressive. It treats Christian identity as authentic and Muslim identity as false. It denies that some Albanians genuinely chose Islam, whether for spiritual conviction, economic opportunity, political advantage, or escape from previous Christian persecution. The truth is, Albanians navigated between empires, Serbian Orthodox, Ottoman Muslim, Venetian Catholic, making choices, maintaining identities, surviving with whatever agency they had. Some chose Islam, some chose Christianity, some mixed both, some were coerced either way. All of them were exercising what limited agency they had in imperial systems designed to control them. Respecting that complexity means not assuming one choice was real and the other fake. The forced conversion narrative, designed to delegitimize Muslim Albanian identity and create justification for Western intervention. The heroic Scanderbeg narrative, designed to hide that he was likely a sponsored proxy, not an independent freedom fighter. Both narratives serve the same goal: control over Albanian identity, Albanian history, and Albanian resources. The truth doesn't care if it makes people uncomfortable. The truth is, the great powers have been playing this game for centuries, using religion and historical mythology to justify what was always about geopolitical control and access to Albanian military capability. And until we're willing to see it clearly, all of it, including the Islamophobic assumptions we've internalized, they'll keep playing it. The forgotten war for Kosovo wasn't Muslim versus Christian. It was empire versus empire, with Albanians as the prize everyone wanted to claim. Sometimes as Christian brothers, sometimes as Muslim victims to save, always as valuable military resources to control. Scanderbeg wasn't the hero who saved Albania. He might have been the asset who kept it contested just long enough for the West to build the infrastructure to keep recruiting Albanian soldiers for centuries to come. And the religious narratives, Christian persecution, forced Muslim conversion, liberation theology, those weren't descriptions of reality. They were tools of empire, wielded by all sides, designed to control how Albanians saw themselves and whose sphere of influence they'd fall into. History is written by the victors. But sometimes, if you look closely enough, you can see the strings. And once you see them, you can't unsee them.